Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Glue Stick channel. Please stay a while and listen. I have returned to get back and get stuck into an often requested monster, the legendary Tarrasque. The origin of this beastie is folklore, believe it or not. The tale comes from Provence in France, the area of Nerluc, and specifically a rock in the middle of the River Rhone. According to the Golden Legend, a book featuring the tales of Saint Martha, there was, at that time, on the banks of the Rhone, in a marsh between Arles and Avignon, a dragon, a half animal, half fish, thicker than an ox, longer than a horse, with teeth like swords and big as horns. He hid in the river where he took the life of all passers-by and submerged vessels. Legend says that the Tarrasque came from Galatia, the offspring of Onachus and the Leviathan. It had the head of a lion, 6 short legs like a bear's, an ox body with a turtle shell, a scaled tail that was tipped with a scorpion's stinger. Well, we see the shell and the tail and the dragon-like proportions in the Dungeons & Dragons version, at least. And it's good to see that a creature of actual folklore and mythology of Europe has made it into Dungeons & Dragons. But, of course, it's quite a different beastie. The legend says that the King Nerluc and his knights attacked the creature with catapults, but it shrugged it off until Saint Martha found the beast and sang hymns and prayers to it, taming it. She led it back to the city, but the people, terrified by the monster, attacked it. The monster offered no resistance as it was tame and died. Martha then preached to the people and converted many of them. Filled with remorse for the death of the tamed monster, the town people changed the town's name to Tarrasque. The legend is a familiar format, such as the tale of Enkidu and the unicorn, echoed in the modern tale of King Kong, where the tremendous monster is charmed by the beauty of a woman only to die at the hands of man. The Tarrasque first appears in Dungeons & Dragons, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, 1st edition Monster Manual 2, published in 1983. A magnificent tome with many forgotten beasties for me to bring to you in due course. In fact, I'm going to be bringing some of those to you very soon. The Ecology of the Tarrasque, written by Ed Greenwood, Jonathan M. Banks, and illustrated by Peter Bergling, was published in Dragon number 359 in September 2007, along with some interesting lore on the lore gems of the ancient elves. We learn that the Tarrasque is an engine of destruction, over 50 feet tall, 70 feet long, with the posture of a hulking Tyrannosaurus Rex, with massive arms it can knuckle walk with in the manner of a great ape, with claws that can tear right through stone fortifications. The thick carapace on its back has the reflectivity and strength of diamond, melted diamond. It has large spikes growing out of it, and 2 massive horns of the same substance jut from the beast's head, which it uses to great effect as a goring, sweeping, and pulverizing weapon. Although melted caramel coloured, the carapace is glossy, and the Tarrasque has brown skin with scabs and warts and bits of encrusted dung all over it, which are grey in colour. The skin is very hard and very thick. Non-magical weapons simply can't penetrate it. Plus, the amazingly resilient armour manages to bounce spell magic off it like it's water off a duck's back. It's not made of diamond, obviously. It's a unique substance that allows the Tarrasque to roll with advantage to save versus any spell or magical effect. Also, if targeted directly by magic missile, prismatic spray, or any ray or any other spell that requires a ranged attack roll, on a roll of 1 to 5 on a d6, the spell just deflects off the Tarrasque, leaving it completely unscathed. On a roll of 6, it rebounds the spell right back at its source. It says in the Monster Manual that we are to treat it as if the reflected spell originated from the Tarrasque. So that's a plus 19 on the attack roll. Good luck, Clothies. Hope you didn't use your most damaging spell. The Tarrasque can eat just about anything. It can digest all organic matter. It could not be poisoned at all. It swallows things whole and its gullet expands. There's a spiraling motion of things going down its gullet. Then down into 3 stomachs. The first is an extremely tough chamber lined with thick cords and knots of muscles. It is lined with very hard, very sharp spines that can break up rock. It is hot and wet, and the whole spiraling mess of its meals constantly churns in a spiral down its first stomach and then roils around, being punctured, pulverized, and ripped to shreds. Bodies will have spines and ribs broken, limbs torn off, crushed between clods of rock and dirt, rolled and bounced off splintered logs. The smaller bits of like glass and metal shards, fragments and bodies and small rocks are drawn into a deeper stomach. The middle stomach is a hot, boiling, fleshy cauldron of highly corrosive acid. And this acid is also unique, capable of stripping magical energy out of any objects. Very little can withstand this process. Everything breaks down. And the third stomach is a long, furnace-hot tract that boils off the acid and vaporizes the tough last bits like metal and stone, absorbing them into the creature. The shocking thing is that this whole process takes mere moments, and despite the extreme metabolism of the Tarrasque, most of the energy it consumes is immediately stored, ready for long periods of docile hibernation deep in the earth. After Tarrasque gluts itself and fully restocks its internal reserves as it goes on a rampage across the landscape, devouring entire towns and hamlets, eating forests, everything in its path, it sinks into the rock as if it were a creature of the elemental planes. Those who have witnessed this process compare it to the earth-glide movement of a Zorn. The Tarrasque can either swim down through the ground until it finds a suitably large cavern to sleep in, or it can remain submerged within the solid rock in a state the dwarves call ironstone. In damp conditions, deep below the surface, the Tarrasque can sleep for up to 50 years before needing to rouse again for feeding. Earlier in dry conditions, and of course it'll wake up immediately if it's disturbed in any way. The process of waking up only takes 1d4 plus 1 rounds, and typically the Tarrasque will be very unpredictable. Best case scenario is that it wakes up, leaves the area, and settles down again somewhere else. The Tarrasque views everything as food when awake. That is all it's really interested in. So while it is phenomenally destructive and violent, it's not actually malicious per se, except to things that can fly. The Tarrasque doesn't like it when food escapes it, basically. The Tarrasque also sees any potential threat as more food, usually, so they don't back down from a fight. Anything in front of it is fair game. Previous listings for the Tarrasque have included its prodigious ability to regenerate physical damage, and it's missing in 5th edition, so feel free to include regeneration 10 or even 20 for particularly high level encounters. The Tarrasque has legendary resistance. It confronts it all with its frightful presence at the start of each round, and then launches into 5 attacks. 1 bite or swallow, 2 claws, a gore with its horn, and slashing bash with its tail. It also has 3 legendary actions that take place at the end of its opponent's turn. Another claw or tail attack, additional movement of 20 feet, rather than its usual 40 feet, or a chomp attack using 2 of its legendary actions with another bite or swallow. So when you combine all that in combat, it's an amazingly terrific monster to fight. It essentially has 5 attacks plus extra attacks during the round, or extra movement during the round, so it can outpace anyone who's chasing it on foot, unless you're on a horse and you're chasing it with a lance, in which case good luck, unless it's a magical lance. And of course, while people are slashing into this thing, it's pulverizing everything around it, so it's very capable of taking on large groups of adventurers. It has godly strength and constitution, an armor class of 25 and 676 hit points minimum. Plus, any attack it makes against a structure inflicts double damage. It's a siege beast. It just demolishes cities, towns, and villages, consuming everything in its path. Despite its relatively small eyes, it has good vision and an acute blind sight out to 220 feet, along with its frightful presence out to 120 feet. Also, keep in mind, this brute can lash out with a tail attack on any target within 20 feet of it. So, what is the Tarrasque? Where did it come from? Is it truly one of a kind? A lot of people say yes, but actually no. It is not the only one of its kind, but there is only one on all of the continent of Faerun. one on the planet of Athos, one on Kryn. It seems to be something of a trend, and there's a theory that they were brought to those worlds by the primordials in the battle for supremacy against the gods. It would certainly explain their ability to meld with rock and pass through it without trace. In the Spelljammer series, the accessory Practical Planetology suggests the Tarrasques originate from the planet Falx. Several hundred Tarrasques live there, where they feed upon the native Imbil, lizard-like creature. And I've got my theories about that, what that planet must look like. It's probably a very large planet that would enable the Tarrasques to have super dense structures in their bones and things that have very hard minerals and things. So high gravity, and there would be a very large amount of these Imbil and other food sources available to them. They're probably a bit more active, or there'd be several Tarrasques active at once around the world, but because they would take so long to and be so sporadic in meeting each other, I would say that when any two Tarrasques meet, that they can mate and breed together, probably only having one or two offspring at most, or having offspring that take a very, very long time to gestate, because otherwise they would simply overpopulate their world to the point where they eat everything. So there's only a few hundred on their home planet, so Tarrasques would be very hard, very, very hard to breed in captivity unless you live for a very, very long time. Tarrasques don't seem to age or die of old age, and they don't seem to die very often of natural causes. They die through violence, and that would normally be magical, possibly. The religious scholars say that the primordials only created one Tarrasque, but perhaps they were prudent enough to merely seed only one on each world that their war was staged on, in order for the Tarrasque to not breed and become completely uncontrollable. In earlier editions, the Tarrasque could regenerate from virtually any damage, and only a couple of wish spells could take it down. As far as I know, there are no cults that worship the Tarrasque, but I certainly could be wrong. They don't have any friends on the earth elementals either. The elemental realms do not consider them to be one of their own. All animals flee from the Tarrasque, and only the most well-trained horses will even approach it. Tarrasques fear nothing. They cannot be charmed and are immune to paralysis. And that's about it for the Tarrasque. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'll be back with more for you very soon. Just a reminder, if you've not subscribed already, feel free to do so. And be sure to hit the notification bell as I upload at crazy hours in the morning. For access to all the scripts and occasional special offers, consider becoming a patron of the channel on Patreon for a minimum of just $1 a month. And join the community on our Discord server. Come say hi. Thanks, everyone. I'll catch you again soon.